Shabbos the Rebbe Azoi, Ubabai Sheni, and in the second Beis Hamikdash. In the second Beis Hamikdash is consistent with what we learned in Perek Beis. Shalai Hayabei Ha'aron V'Haluchos, that the Aron and Luchos were not present because it was hidden, and apparently the Alter Rebbe holds that the Geniz of the Aron and the Luchos affects that this Gili of Bnei Allah, this Gili of Alma Deskasya was not present, even though the Rebbe has so many siches where he explains in Rambam that the Geniza was part of the Beis Hamikdash. What the Rebbe says about the Aron? He says the Aron must always be in the Beis Hamikdash. Can't be removed, as they state. Ayah was hidden, so he said when Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash, he lechatchila made 2 Kedesh HaKadoshim. It's not the fact they hid the Aron so it shouldn't get stolen. They put it in the alternate Kedesh HaKadoshim. So it's in the Kedesh HaKadoshim in a state of Geniza. But the Rebbe says, Shalai Hayabei Ha'aron V'Haluchos, the Aron and Luchos were lacking in the second Beis HaMikdash. Amr Razal, the Gemara says, Shalai Hayashchina Sheidabei. There was no Shechina in the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Rebbe, but this doesn't mean there was no Shechina. Of course there was Shechina. The Shechina we learned about in Nun Beis, Perek Nun Beis, was present in the second Beis HaMikdash. The Shechina, which is the way it comes into Malchus of Atzilus. Alma Desgalye, Matronisa, Neim Etato, Neim Abonim, and so forth and so on. That Madrega of Shechina was present. In other words, the level of the Neshama, which is Mislabish in the brain, which is called Gilui, was in the second Beis HaMikdash. The level of the Neshama, which is Mislabish in the brain, which is called the Helam, that was not in the second Beis HaMikdash. Pirush. Says the Rebbe, it doesn't mean there was no Shechina. It means that Madrega's Shechina, that step, that level of Shechina, which manifested in the first Beis HaMikdash, which is it doesn't go through the chain reaction of worlds. That was not present in the second Beis HaMikdash. Ella, but rather that Babai is Shein in the second Beis HaMikdash, there was a manifestation of Shechina, but not then it was Kederech, Hishtalshus, V'Slapshus, in a form of chain reaction and revelation. That it went from Malchus Datzilus to Malchus Debriya, and from Udebriya to Malchus Yetzira. Went through all the different Malchuses. Now remember, you have to say really 2 steps. It goes from the Malchus of one world to the Kedesh Kadashim of the next world. From the Kedesh Kadashim of the next world to the Malchus of the next world. The Kedesh Kadashim is the Alma Deskasi of that world. The Luchas is the Alma Deskasi of the whole Seder Shtalshalos. But the Kedesh Kadashim is the Alma Deskasi of each individual world. And then from Malchus, which is called the Riches of the Al Seder Seif, which is Shechina, which is Gilui. Well, the Yetzira, now he articulates Behechel Kedesh Kadashim Dasiya, in the Holy of Holies of Asiya. And the emes is he could have said it by other worlds, he's just being Makatze by Pashtis. Kedesh Kadashim Dasiya, the Alma Deskasi of Asiya, Hayim Islabish, was manifest in Shechina, in Malchus of Asiya Ruchnis, and then from there, Kedesh Kadashim Shal Beis Hamikdash Shalamata, and the Holy of Holies of our physical Beis Hamikdash, V'shar Savei HaShechina, the Shechina manifested that it was Malchus, the Yetzira, Hamalubeshes, Kedesh Kadashim Dasiya, Malchus of Yetzira, came down into the Kedesh Kadashim of Asiya, and Kedesh Kadashim of Asiya HaGashmas. And since there was a Gili of Shechina in the Beis HaMikdash, but in Baye Sheni went through Ishtalshlos, so it was only Alma Dizgalya, Emetato, Matronisik, Knesset Yisrael, Emabonim, as opposed to Alma Dizgasya. And therefore, Lo Yahirashi Shum, Adam Likanit Sham, no man was allowed to go into the Kedesh Kadashim because the Shechina was revealed there. Levat, Kein Gadol B'Yom Kippurim, only Kein Gadol on Yom Kippur. Stop. Zogt Weiter, Umeshachar Beis HaMikdash, now the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Now don't we have Shechina, Ilah, we don't even have Shechina Tata. No, I don't have the Madrega of Bina, which is represented by the Luchas. We don't even have the Madrega of Malchus, which is represented by the Torah. And I want you to understand how it works. In the olden days, we daven towards Yerushalayim. Right? Why? Because the Shechina is in the Beis HaMikdash. Or you live in Yerushalayim, daven to the Beis HaMikdash. In the Beis HaMikdash, daven to the Kedesh HaKadoshim. Because the Shechina is in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Tfilas went to the Shechina, and that's what it was. Now there's no Beis HaMikdash. We're still davening towards Yerushalayim. Why? Because Beis HaMikdash Shal Maila is mechuven connected to Beis HaMikdash Amata, they're connected. And we daven towards Yerushalayim, we're trying to reach a Beis HaMikdash Aruchni. Since the physical Beis HaMikdash is missing, we're skipping a step. We want to go through Shalei B'derech Shtalshalos. That's why in times of Golos, it's Ein Tanya Dei Admo, it's harder to see the Yad Hashem in our lives, because there's no his slapshus and his galus, the Reishis galus himself, in the physical Beis HaMikdash. We're trying to connect to Asiyah Ruchnis directly. So the wires don't always work out so gilidik. So now, Ein Lelakadosh Baruch Hu Hashem doesn't have in this world Eladal Damas Shalaloch, Abavad the 4 cubits of Allah. Where do you have Shechina in Tate? And in Tate Shabal Peh, not even in Mikra where you have it in Saf Gilui, not in Allah. Even one individual sits and studies Tate in a preoccupying way, Shechina, even the Shechina is with him. Right? In Chav Gimel, he gets the Kedesh, the Rebbe is going to make a distinction between a minyan, which affects Hashras HaShechina, and left on a minyan, which affects some kind of his slapshus HaShechina. So it says Shechina Imei. It doesn't say Shechina Shruya, it says Shechina Imei. Vadayin Tzarech Yin Gadol. Kedis of Brachas Peder Kamak, it says in the Gemara in Brachas. Piro Shechina Imei. What's the translation of the word Shechina Imei? Is with him, as opposed to, I don't know what. Shechina is Sheire. Through the pathway of chain reaction of words in the revelation of Malchus da Atzilus, in Malchus de Bria, and then in Malchus V'Yetira. And then in Malchus V'Asiya comes down into the lower and lower worlds. The majority of the 613 mitzvahs of the Teda, Ruban Kekulam, the vast majority of them, hein mitzvahs maisias are physical and behavioral mitzvahs. Moreover, even those that are atluyas b'dibur machshava, connected speech and thought, like we had in the beginning of Perek Lamed Ches and the beginning of Perek Lamed Zayin, Kamei Talmud Teda, like saying words of Teda, or Birchas Hamazon and saying benching, or Kriyishma and saying Kriyishma, or Tefillah and davening with your mouth, even though it's a D'Rabbanan. Hakaimos of the halacha is the hiru lav kedibadami. Thinking is not enough. You don't fulfill the obligation of davening simply by thinking. You have to move your lips. The halacha is that when you're moving your lips, you're also doing a deed, or in the lashon of the Alter Rebbe and Tanya before, it's called Maisa Zuta, a miniature action. So the vast majority of mitzvahs are physical asiyah. The 630 mitzvahs of the Teda. And the 7 mitzvahs that Rabbana begematria keser have to do with keser. Now remember what I told you a few days ago. This arichas, this inyan, which is here, but kitzanim, it is ba'arichas gedelin against the kedesh simach of tes. Well, today we talked about why halacha is called kisra shel Teda, and that's a lavush for tainuch elya, like we discussed a few days ago. Shurat nalyin baruch, which is infinite will of the Eibishter. Hamlu b'shmach masa is baruch, which comes down to the Eibishter's wisdom. Ham yochad is beidin tzav baruch, which is one with the eidin tzav, which is higher than keser and higher than chachma. B'tachas ayuchad in the highest level of unity. So Teda, which is the mitzvah ratzon helyon, and Teda is chachma, and in the ratzon and in the Teda you have ein sof. But the shem bechachma yasaderet, and using this chachma and this keser, the Eibishter founds aretz. What's aretz? He teresh b'alpeh. He says teresh b'alpeh. The nafke mechachma law. It came from chachma law, and it descends into malchus, and not stam into malchus. It descends till malchus of asiyah. And that's how we have physical Teda mitzvahs. It says the Abba, that Chochma, Abba means the father. Yossi Brata founds his daughter, which Brata means the daughter, which goes on Malchus. And the point is that we have a Gilia Shechina not directly from Teda Shebeksav. In other words, not directly from the Luchas Abrius. We have Gilui of Shechina Dafka through Teda Shebeksav. In other words, now the most important thing is halacha. Even though in Lomdus and in Halacha the Lukus is Begilui, as opposed to in Kabbalah, where the Lukus is Behelim, but because of the Golos, because of the Golos of Shechina, we can't get the Beis HaMikdash where there was a Gilui of Pnimis HaTeira, now the Ikir is Halacha, because in Halacha the Eibishter is revealed in a concealed way, as it were. So if you will, I would say the following. You have 3 Madregas. You have Bayis Rishon, which is a Gilui of Binei law, Eimei law, which for all intents and purposes is higher than Ishtalshalos. It's called Alma Diskasia. He calls it also Gilui, because it's available in this world, but it's like the Etzem HaNeshama being in the brain. And by Yeshenia, the Gilui of Shechina, which is Malchus of Atzilus, which is called Alma Diskasia. It's a lower Madrege that goes through Ishtalshalos, but it's still Magal Eidin Tzav. And in Gauss you have Teresh Balpeh. And the Shechina is hidden in Teresh Balpeh.